The most quoted speech in history hides a revolutionary secret. God's kingdom doesn't start with the powerful. It starts with the powerless. Today, we'll uncover the true meaning behind Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Welcome to Explained Simply channel, where complex topics become crystal clear and easy to understand. The most influential speech in history. Picture this. A collection of teachings just 3 chapters long that has been quoted more than any other speech in human history. Words that have shaped the moral compass of billions of people across 2,000 years, influencing everyone from medieval monks to modern civil rights leaders. If you've ever heard of Jesus of Nazareth, you know he was a famous teacher. But what made his words so powerful that they still echo through time? Love your neighbor as yourself. Do to others what you would have them do to you. These aren't just nice sayings. They come from what's called the Sermon on the Mount, and its ideas and images have become woven into the fabric of human civilization. You are the salt of the earth. You can't serve both God and money. Take the plank out of your eye before you take the speck out of another's. Even people who've never opened a Bible recognize these phrases. But here's where it gets interesting. Mixed in with these inspiring words are some really challenging teachings that make you stop and think. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, turn and offer him the other cheek. Love your enemy, and bless those who persecute you. Revolutionary ideas that inspired figures like Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. to transform entire nations through nonviolent resistance. And then there are the puzzling ones that make you scratch your head. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off? What does that even mean? But here's what most people miss. The Sermon on the Mount isn't just a random collection of wise sayings thrown together. It's been organized with incredible intentionality, designed like a beautiful architectural structure to help people remember and meditate on its message. The sermon has 3 main parts. The middle part contains 3 sections, and each of those sections has 3 parts within them. It's like a masterpiece of teaching design. And right at the very center of this carefully constructed sermon, the famous prayer that Jesus taught his followers. Our Father in heaven, may your name be treated as holy. May your kingdom come. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That phrase, God's kingdom on earth, is the key to understanding everything Jesus taught that day. But what does it actually mean? The kingdom that changed everything. To understand what Jesus meant by God's kingdom coming to earth, we need to step back and see the bigger picture. Jesus was Jewish, and he grew up immersed in the Hebrew Bible, the sacred scriptures of Israel. These ancient texts told an epic story about God and all of humanity, a story that began at the very beginning. The story goes like this. God created a well-ordered world, a place of beauty and abundance where everything functioned in perfect harmony. And then God appointed humans, people like you and me, to rule over this world on his behalf. Not as tyrants or conquerors, but as representatives of God's character. Imagine a kingdom where leaders rule with genuine wisdom and love, where justice flows like a river and peace prevails in every corner, where there's enough food for everyone, where the vulnerable are protected, where communities flourish. That's what it looks like when God's will is being done on earth as it is in heaven. That's God's kingdom, not some distant spiritual realm, but a tangible reality right here, right now. But here's the problem. Humans had other ideas. Instead of partnering with God's wisdom, they foolishly rebelled and started building their own kingdoms by their own wisdom. Greed, violence, oppression, all the chaos we see in human history came from this tragic choice. The well-ordered world became fractured and broken. So what did God do? He didn't give up on humanity. Instead, God chose one family, the Israelites, and offered them something extraordinary, his wisdom. It was called the Torah, which in Hebrew simply means the teaching or the instruction. And it all began on a mountain, Mount Sinai to be exact. There, through Moses, God entered into a sacred covenant with the Israelites, giving them a way of life that reflected his character. But why choose just one family out of all the peoples on earth? It seems oddly exclusive, doesn't it? Here's the thing. The goal wasn't favoritism. God's plan was for the Israelites to be transformed by his wisdom, to become a living example of what God's kingdom looks like in action. They were meant to be a light to all nations, demonstrating to the world what happens when humans align themselves with God's design. Israel wasn't chosen to be exclusive. They were chosen to be a showcase, an invitation to all humanity. The revolution begins with the weak. But fast forward to Jesus' day, and God's kingdom was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Israel found itself crushed under the iron fist of Roman oppressors. Roman soldiers patrolled their streets. Roman taxes bled them dry. Roman governors ruled with cruelty and contempt. So the question haunted everyone: why isn't God's kingdom coming? What went wrong? Different groups had different answers. The religious leaders, the scribes and Pharisees, believed the problem was that Israel wasn't being faithful enough to the Torah. If only everyone would follow the rules more strictly, God would finally act. The Sadducees, the wealthy elite, took a more pragmatic approach. They thought the best strategy was to cooperate with Rome, to become power brokers who maintained order and their own comfortable positions. Then there were the Zealots, freedom fighters who ran for the hills, preparing for armed rebellion against Rome. And some withdrew entirely to the desert, forming communities where they waited for God to use them to launch a brand new Israel, purified and ready. But walk through the hill country of Galilee like Jesus did, and you'd mostly encounter ordinary people just trying to survive. Farmers who'd lost their ancestral land to Roman seizure. Day laborers struggling to feed their families. Sick people with no access to healing. Desperate people crushed under taxation so heavy they could barely breathe. These were the powerless, the forgotten, the nobodies of society. They had no political voice, no economic leverage, no hope of change. And this is precisely where Jesus went. He traveled among these broken people, healing the sick, and making an announcement that seemed impossible. God's kingdom was arriving. Not someday in the distant future, but now. People gathered from villages across the region to hear this radical teacher. And one day, Jesus climbed up a tall hill, looked out at the crowd of poor and powerless people gathered before him, and declared that the arrival of God's kingdom was starting right here, right now, with them. Wait, with these people? The powerless? The weak? The nobodies crushed by Roman boots? God's kingdom begins here, in this place of suffering and defeat? Yes, and this is why the very first words out of Jesus' mouth in the Sermon on the Mount were, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." In other words, where can you go and see God's presence and blessings springing to life? Among the wealthy elite in their palaces? Among the powerful who control armies and economies? No, Jesus says, look where people are poor, where they feel crushed and defeated, where hope seems like a distant memory. God's kingdom is beginning with the people standing right here on this hillside. It was a revolutionary reversal of everything people expected. And those blessings Jesus pronounced that day, they're what we're going to explore next. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to see how this story continues. See you next time.